Welcome to the Tuesday Review After Dark. So we got a little bit of time in the studio. So Callum and I... Oh, this is James, by the way, joined by Callum.
That's it.
Nathan's not here at the moment. But yeah, we had a little time in the studio and we figured since I had finished reading or listening to the audiobook of In Plain Sight, the ufology book, which I mentioned on an episode, a few episodes prior, we thought, yeah, we'd just quickly
Have a discussion about it.
talk about it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to actually check. So, I mean, listeners have all the informations. So episode 132. So for episode 132 of the Tuesday Review, we talked about how I was listening to In Plain Sight, which is a ufology book by Australian investigative journalist Ross Coulthart. And yeah, I was like maybe halfway through or roughly. And since then, yeah, I finished it. And this is a book, came out last year, and pretty much since then, Callum's been bugging me to read it almost every week. And I finally, I got the audiobook and finished it. Yeah, and it's a good book for what were we saying before, like off air, like how it sets everything out.
Yeah, so the first half of the book...
It's a good beginner's guide, I think you said.
The first half of the book is a kind of primer of sorts, where it's like, here's what comes before. So here's all of the big footnotes in ufology history. And for listeners who might not be familiar with the subject, ufology is the study of sightings of extraterrestrials and aliens more broadly.
UFOs, yeah.
You know, this kind of paranormally kind of stuff.
Not necessarily aliens, but like UFOs.
Yeah. But everything from little grey men to
Lights in the sky,
that type of thing. But you know, the people who talk about ufology often talk about the surrounding material as well.
Yeah.
So Ross Coulthart kind of dove headfirst into this subject as a journalist first and foremost, because he was kind of on the fence for most of the book.
Did he work for the ABC?
And he works at Channel 9, and like he does work with all kinds of different...
investigative journalist. He had no interest in aliens or UFOs.
No, he didn't.
He didn't believe in it.
That's why it was kind of interesting, because most of the people who write about UFOs are either diehard skeptics or they're tinfoil hat, full-on believers.
Yeah.
So it's always great when somebody who's not that invested in the subject kind of decides to
who has
search
a bit of,
things out a bit.
Who's able to step back.
Especially with his skill set.
Yeah.
But the first half of the book is a primer, what's come before. Like, it talks about the first sightings, not literally the first sightings, but, you know, like the first ones to actually make the media.
It starts in like the 30s and then, you know, it goes into the 40s with Roswell.
And then it kind of brings you a selection of big cases throughout history until we get to the more modern era.
Yeah.
And then the second half is a more feet on the ground. I'm going to search people out and see if I can find out what's actually happening.
He actually interviews people who have insider knowledge.
Now, I feel bad because I kind of ruined it for you a little bit, because like I'm coming into the studio every week like, James, you'll never believe the stuff I've been reading.
So like Callum for me is my source of
I'm the
UFO.
smoking man. I'm the smoking man to your Fox Mulder.
Yeah, you're my the deep throat, because you get to, you come in and like tell me everything, but you're my source for all of this. Like every week you'll be like, okay, so here's the big news that's happened in ufology. Here's the big, did you hear about this thing?
Yeah.
So I don't have to look it up. I don't have to go on Reddit and all that, because Callum does that for me.
I just kick the door. I kick the door down. You'll be like, with the crazy look in my eyes, you'll never believe what the CIA did this time, James.
And so you read In Plain Sight, and then you were basically telling me all about it, and I'm like, okay, I'll read it. And you're like, you have to read it. I'm like, okay, but you basically told me everything.
Yeah, I couldn't help it. I said to James, it blew every 10 pages, my mind was getting blown like a car engine.
Yeah. But as I said, like, it's good because a lot of the stuff I knew, like a lot of the main,
especially the first half.
yeah,
There's a lot
like
of
the
classics in it,
Roswell and Majestic 12 and all that stuff, and you got the main 20th century sightings and whatever. But there was the Australian slant to it, which is interesting, which
we don't talk about very much.
No,
in
you
ufology,
usually don't see that. So that stuff I knew, but it was good to have it all set out, in order and like
in a easy to understand chronological timeline.
And also the way Ross Coulthart, like, he frames it, he's just like, here it is, but like this is what it means in the larger context of what I'm trying to do here. And then the second half of the book is where he interviews
all kinds of people.
All kinds of people who, like, military leaders
Insiders,
or CIA who kind of claim to have knowledge about,
who have claim to have seen things, or
heard
from people who have seen things, and this type of thing.
And that's the stuff where it gets interesting by the end of and it's a good, as I was saying to Callum off air, like, it's a good book for skeptics because he's not just going, oh, this stuff's real, and he's like, here's the actual stuff that's happened, here's what's been recorded. And there are high up military and government officials trying to hide it or rushing around behind closed doors doing things about it. So he doesn't claim to have the answers, but he's like, there is something going on. And that's kind of my perspective, is I don't know.
There's no smoke without fire. And this is the biggest fire. Like they always say, and this is kind of a cliche to ufologists, so I apologize for pulling out a classic, but it is the biggest story in human history. Like this subject as a whole is the biggest, the most important story there is. And we don't talk, it's cringe, like people talk about aliens and it's cringe. In fact, the recent report came out, because every year now there's like a UFO report, legally mandated. They have to collect all reports and they get put into an office, and then the office investigates the reports, and lots of tedious paperwork. But the people talking about it this year, they keep dropping these cringe lines like, oh, we didn't see any little grey men, and there are no aliens, space aliens, just when they drop. It
I think it's
infantilizes. I'm sorry, I'm getting all foggy brain.
We talked about it.
But what was I saying?
People don't take it seriously.
It's the biggest story in human history. So when we infantilize it and we contextualize it in this, oh, look, haha, little green men kind of thing, it takes away the scope of what we're talking about. Because it's not necessarily about what they look like. It's about what the idea represents.
Exactly. I think we talked about when we reviewed Nope, and, we started talking about UFOs and cryptids and stuff. And it's just like, you start talking about that and automatically people are like, oh, here's a tinfoil hat weirdo. Let's just ignore everything he says. But I'm like, it's interesting to think about. There is a lot of stuff out there we don't know about. And there's stuff we still don't understand. And I'm not claiming to know what that is, but it's interesting to think about. And if aliens are out there, UFOs are coming to visit Earth, that is the biggest story ever.
So what I find really interesting, and like ufology is an interesting subject to look at as its own subject entirely, because it comes and goes in cycles where we find ourselves in like the same position people were in like, I think the 80s, I think it is, where you get all these people who claim to know the truth and they're being fed info by CIA disinformation agents and people from the Air Force, again, disinformation. Like people come and go. You get these people like Tom DeLonge is the main one now. But before it was, I can't remember the gentleman's name, but Richard Doty was feeding people information, and it was false information for the purpose of shifting the view. So like you weren't asking the correct questions because you were being told things to change the conversation. But we're in that cycle again now where who knows who's telling the truth? Nobody really knows. And you've got all the agents are saying one thing, but then you've got all the other people who are a bit older who have seen these cycles come and go before. They don't believe anything the Pentagon's saying, and for good reason.
We're at a point now where it's almost impossible to figure out what's true and what's not. And that's probably deliberate because whatever they're trying to hide, the only way to hide it is to smokescreen.
Yeah, I did find it really interesting, and this is something Ross Coulthart actually brings up. Tom DeLonge features pretty heavily in his book, and Tom DeLonge, of course, as any of our millennial listeners or slightly older, maybe slightly younger might know, he's a musician of Blink-182 fame. But he left the band because he decided he needed to bring the truth of aliens to the world, and everyone laughed at him.
And when you say that, you're like, oh, roll your eyes, a rock star who wants to uncover aliens.
Tom DeLonge claims that he put all the pieces together himself over many years of independent research.
Yeah.
Which is technically possible, right? If you read every interview, every angle, every book that's ever been written, every interview that's ever been recorded, you might be able to put a few of the pieces together yourself. But keeping in mind, that's like thousands of hours, untold books and newspaper clippings throughout history. It's not an easy thing for a person to do.
No.
He claims to have basically kind of done that. Not literally, but he read widely enough that he could see the common threads in that yarn.
Yeah.
Anyway, so he started talking about it, and then he talked to a general apparently, and everyone was like, yeah, sure, Tom. They, rolled his eyes because they thought he was crazy. So he claims before... we'll get to the surprises in a second. I swear this is going, listeners, is what I'm trying to say. He made all these huge claims about working with government insiders and, getting the truth and talking to 5-star generals, and everyone was like, yeah, sure, man, whatever. Make another Blink-182 album, still wasting my time. But then there was the Hillary Clinton's email leak.
Yeah.
And he was caught in email chains talking about UFOs and stuff, and everyone was like, wait, really? He's talking to the White House and government people? And then it turns out that he actually was telling the truth.
Yeah, there was actually schedules of showing
and there was he was in skiffs, the
Yeah.
secure compartment in whatever things.
Yeah.
And he was vindicated, but at the same time, if you look at, like I said earlier, if you look at ufology as a whole subject, we've been here before. Not to the same extent. That's an important footnote.
Yeah.
We've never had the government involved at such a direct level. It's always been CIA agents or people of that nature, where it's loosely affiliated.
An ex-CIA agent who comes out and says,
so it is more official now than it ever has been, now with an official government office.
Yeah, and they're finally starting to release videos.
But what did you think?
Official videos.
Yeah, before we get on to the more up to current thing, what did you think of the book anyway? How was your having finished it?
It's like I said, it's a good book. It's good to have it all set out. For me, who knew a lot of the main stuff, but didn't know every detail, and also didn't know a lot of the later stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of it you already told me, but to have it all set out.
Yeah.
And also for Ross Coulthart to be it's not all tinfoil hat craziness. He's like, look, even at the end of the book, he says, look, I don't have the answer. I'm not sure how much of this is true, but here's the evidence I've learned. Here's the people I've talked to. And, there is something.
Yeah, there's he finds a compelling amount of anecdotal evidence.
Yeah.
As well as finding out, radar, how does radar work? The places that there are, the installations and stuff. And he talks to military people who claim to see these things on the regular. And I'm like, that's stuff that interests me, where we live in a world where it's officially denied.
Yeah.
For example, the Australian government thinks it's a joke. The Australian government officially doesn't recognise any of it, and they think it's foolish. But they're captured on radar at our military installations.
Yeah.
So there's this cognitive dissonance we have, where there's the government, and to be honest, I don't blame the Australian government. The Australian government doesn't give a shit. Why would they? They should.
They actually talk about it in the book. It's if these things, if they're alien, who knows
whatever
if they're aliens,
they are,
whatever they are, if they constantly come and buzz around our military installations and our military aircraft and our airspace and whatever, it should be taken more seriously.
Yeah, that's so. I've always thought, and this is for context for listeners. I can't remember what state it's in. I think it's either the Northern Territory or the far north Queensland. There's a joint military base between Australia and America. Can you remember which one?
Not Pine Gap. Is that what it's called?
Yeah, I can't remember.
I'll look it up.
But there's this military base where they capture the signatures of these devices, these craft, whatever you want to refer to them as, entering airspace and leaving airspace. They refer to them as fast walkers, I think they call them.
Oh, the Harold E. Holt Naval Communications Station?
That might be it, maybe. Yeah.
That's, yeah, in WA.
Oh, there you go, WA. Yeah.
Yeah.
The interesting thing is Australia has a stake in this subject and the government seems to not really give a toss. So I'm like, on one hand, maybe the US government doesn't let them know. So if it's a joint military operation, maybe the Australian government can't see those files. I don't know how it works.
Yeah.
Alternatively, maybe they do know and they just don't talk about it, like that old school stance where.
Well, that's the thing is
never confirm, always deny, because security in
that's
quotation marks.
That's the thing is like the only things we know are the things that leak or are made public, but there's probably a lot of stuff that we're not allowed to know because of national security and whatever.
Alternatively, the Australian government just doesn't give a shit, which is the simplest answer. And because I imagine an Australian bogan in Parliament or whatever, and they're like, oh, we have this, UFO measure or whatever, and I can imagine them being like, oh, get out of here.
It's also what we just discussed. People don't take it seriously. So if a politician got up and said, hey, there's these UFOs, we should be taking them seriously, everyone's going to laugh them out of Parliament.
Yeah.
And on one hand, I understand that. And there's a lot of stuff to worry about in this country the world without having to worry about. And it also, I think we talked about this when we talked about Nope. Like, if anything's proven, or the more you look into it, the existential crisis it would cause.
Huge.
The religious implications.
I'd say it's interesting, right? I was talking about this with someone a few weeks ago. And out of all of the religions which, had their stances on UFOs, apparently Islam is the friendliest to it, because in canon, in the Islamic canon, God made more than one civilization, if that makes sense.
Oh, really?
And you've also got the jinn, which have their own society in Middle Eastern folklore. So it's like in Middle Eastern folklore, but Islamic folklore generally, you have some jinn which are Muslim, but some jinn which aren't.
Jinn mythology would predate Islam.
It does. But in their worldview, so to speak, it's open to
they accept it.
It's open to there being multiple types of beings.
But
all within God's, God's.
But as with all religions, I feel like
scope.
There's a difference between what will people accept.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, even the people.
Even if the Catholic Bible said, and there's also aliens, I feel like a lot of people would just reject it.
We talked about this once before when I was talking about how I read communication. And one of the things
You read communication?
Communion.
Yeah.
One of the things that Strieber wrote in his alleged encounter was that... sorry, James heard this a million times. I'm sorry.
Right. It's good for the listeners the ones who are still left listening.
Yeah, I know. One of the best things in the whole book, and not good for Whitley, but good for a reader because it strikes such fear into you, is that he claims that when you encounter an unearthly intelligence in person, it drives all the common sense out of you. You basically just become a monkey, because it's one thing to talk about UFOs. It's another thing to physically be with one, because it brings you to an animalistic reptilian state where you're it's crazy fear.
It could be.
You got that element. If aliens were confirmed, it's us in this studio, we'd be like, yeah, nervous but kind of cool.
Well, that's the thing is.
For most people,
we would love to see an alien, but I think if you actually did,
I'll see one from afar on your TV.
Yeah, it would probably blow your mind.
Yeah,
but also on top of that,
especially if they please look humanoid-ish.
Yeah, well, that's disturbing enough. Yeah, but it's also it's one thing to see one and be freak out, but there's also the theory that it's actually part of their what's the word I'm looking for? It's part of their thing that when you do see them, it's it blows your mind.
Oh yeah, so it provokes a response in you. So there's this whole theory that and this goes to the more fringe idea that they created human beings. Like that.
That's a whole nother thing. Yeah.
Yeah, that servile kind of thing where
Yeah.
you look at them and you're brought back to that kind of prey predator kind of state where you're like, do whatever they say
But
or
it's
they'll
kind of
hurt
like,
you.
in Nope, where, not to spoil it, but the thing creates a field so that electronics don't work.
Yeah.
And so that explains why we can't
Record them.
capture it.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's the thing here is like, if you saw an alien, you'll get shocked, but it might be part of their physical makeup or part of their psychic abilities or whatever, that there is some sort of smokescreen where you just lose your mind.
Well, that even goes to...
We're getting off the rails here.
No, we're not. We're actually not.
Okay.
So
I can't remember what we were talking about.
I don't think this is something that Coulthart talks about
I
specifically.
think he mentioned something. Yeah,
but this is more in the realm of your Jacques Vallée, who's another heavy hitter of ufology. He often talks about his major claim and contribution to ufology is much in the same vein as John Keel's, where he views all paranormal entities as being a manifestation of a similar thing.
Yeah.
So he says that the folkloric notion of fairies,
we talked about it on Nope.
getting lost in forests and things like that, and the
We talked about on Nope
the
where
confusion.
all the angels and ghosts and cryptids and aliens could be maybe the same phenomena.
Or they come from the same place and they have a similar effect on people. But the whole thing with aliens and the mind control and the losing of time, especially the losing of time.
Losing time, yeah.
It's very much a fairy-ish thing where you'll enter a forest, lose track of time. Oh, the sun's gone down. I've only been here for 5 minutes. So it's like this, it's this weird thing they seem to do with people. Same with the paralyzing, the classic alien pointing the rod at people and then they can't move. Same with fairies. There's so many folkloric stories out of places like Ireland and stuff.
Sleep paralysis demons.
Where they end up just having to stand still and then eventually they can leave the fairy circle or whatever. But that's outside of the scope of Ross Coulthart's book. Certainly.
Yeah, that's we just went on a tangent there. But yeah, the book is much more matter of fact.
It's academic.
It's very dry. I think to read it, this is why Nathan still hasn't finished it, because he's actually reading the physical book, and I think to read it would take a lot longer because it's very dry. I think
I demolished it.
Yeah, but you're a expert reader. Like you smash books out.
It depends on the subject. Like that kind of stuff, I can just get it in me.
Yeah, but most books, you read how many books a year?
Yeah,
like physically read them. So I struggle to get through, and that's why I've started listening to audiobooks because it's much easier. But yeah, the book can be a bit dry, but I think that's why it's a good book, one for beginners, but two for kind of skeptics, because it's not the crazy tinfoil hat stuff that we just went on a tangent about. It's the more like, in this year, there were several radar systems that picked up the same unidentified flying object or UFO or what are they called now? Unidentified aerial phenomena, UAP.
Yep. There's also unidentified sea phenomena or something. There's like a whole range of...
Oh, yeah.
It's a whole nomenclature thing.
Yeah, that's the other thing is like there's ones that go into the sea...
transmedium vehicles.
Yeah, that's a whole other thing. But yeah, his book will just be like, this year there's actually on record, you can go and see that they all picked up the same thing, and there was a pilot who visually saw it, and there was another pilot coming the opposite way who visually saw it.
Yeah.
And he's like, I'm not saying it's aliens, I don't know what it is, but that happened.
Yeah, what does that mean?
Yeah. And then also he's like, and then a few days later, some CIA guys came and said, no one talk about this. And they took the radar data.
Yeah.
And he's just like, I don't know what it was. It's not aliens, but something happened. There was a cover. There's going, and that's my point of view. Is there's something going on.
Like if it wasn't such a big deal, like if it wasn't aliens, for example, if it was Chinese drones, like let's just for a minute we'll play the government's game. Which for listeners, the new thing now is because they had to set up the office for the reports, they suddenly have to find themselves accountable for the reports. So the new thing is, when asked by reporters, what have they come to any conclusions or whatever, it's Chinese drones.
Yeah.
So if it was Chinese drones, again, to play the government's game, why is there such secrecy over it? Number one.
No, there should be more secrecy. They shouldn't just go straight out and admit it.
Yeah, but like number one, I mean by secrecy, I mean why are they obfuscating so much? Why are there so many redactions? Why, for example,
if they're admitting that it's Chinese drones, why are they? Yeah.
Why, for example, are they confiscating all of the evidence from naval bases? And you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's that type of thing. It's like, is it such a big matter that all of the tapes are destroyed?
It's something they do from the beginning,
Yeah.
and something they do for other things as well. It's they can just cry national security risk, and then they can do whatever they want. They can trample over and take anything they want. But yeah, there's something else going on. It's not just it's national security.
Yeah,
it's just like why. And there's a lot of like high up respected government and military officials who are looking into this stuff and not being allowed to go certain places or see certain things.
Yeah,
and so there are like we have no idea how far this goes and who knows what. And like we said earlier, there's so much misinformation and disinformation that we don't know what's real and what's not.
Yeah.
So at this point, like, yeah, there's not like we don't have an answer. The book doesn't have an answer.
No.
But again, it's a good matter of fact. Here's the facts and
what's interesting
here's
is
the implications.
Ross Coulthart was so moved by the things that he heard and saw by this that he continued to do the research after the book was released.
Well, that's the thing. We mentioned, like, he didn't believe in it at first until he started to talking to these people, and then he's like, holy crap, there's something going on here, and that's when he wrote the book. And now the book's done, and he's still going out and, like...
Yeah, because he calls it, like, the greatest story.
Yeah. And he's not, like... I feel like a lot of the time when someone says, I'm a UFO journalist or whatever, it's like, well, there's got to be something in it for them. Yeah. But I think, like, Ross Coulthart is an Australian... journalist for the last 30 plus years with no ties to the UFO community at all. It's only in the last few years that he's like, hang on a sec, there's something here that I can investigate.
I think it's because the story is actually a lot it's a lot, I mean, cool's the wrong word. There's so much meat on the bones for any actually well-trained investigative journalist that once you start like going down that rabbit hole, you're going to find yourselves in places you didn't expect. You're going to be seeing names you didn't expect. Like you said earlier, you know, people high up in the food chain have something to do with it. So it's like for anybody who can actually follow these breadcrumbs like Ross Coulthart does in the book, it doesn't matter where you are on the spectrum, right? If you're to the far end of the skeptic, like Mick West, for example, if he was to follow the footsteps, you do come to some unescapable conclusions, which it's not just birds in the sky. Like, you know, and people always talk about, malfunctioning radar and stuff like that. It's a possibility. Personally, I think they found something at Roswell. Myself, that's a personal belief. The official line, it was a weather balloon. Yeah. I doubt it.
Which I think they talk about at the start of the book is like they changed their story.
Yeah, they did. They changed this story. The invention of AI has been an interesting thing for ufology. I think it was AI that did it. I'm not 100% sure. They managed to get lettering from the redacted Roswell document. There was a what do they call it? Where you send them through a wire. A military one. Yeah. And they apparently got the words out through the black tape or whatever it was. Anyway, the black marker. Yeah. And it suggests that a disk crashed. And again, this isn't official by any means. This is just some people playing with AI stuff on their, computers at home with a PDF and trying to, like play with the color levels. And it took them a long time to get there. But it says that there was allegedly, and again, this could all be, for all I know, it's all fake, right? Like I say to James all the time, it's a good science fiction story. Yeah,
that's the thing. We're not claiming it to be real, but that's the point Ross Coulthart makes in the book as well. He's like, look, there's a lot of this that's probably hoaxes, but then also like something will happen where he's like, but here's the actual evidence, to suggest that maybe part of it is true.
Yeah. So they found this document and they used computers to image it up or whatever. Yeah. And it does claim that a disc originally fell with bodies in the disc. And apparently some people from the army like died as a result. They were like victims of the disc.
Well, in the book, I remember they say something about they were transporting the bodies they found and the plane went missing.
Yeah.
And I can't remember exactly, but I think like there's actually official records of something going on.
Yeah.
So again, there's no official records of them recovering alien bodies or the UFO, but there's like other stuff. It's like metadata.
Yeah,
You can't tell what someone's doing, but you can see what time they were there, kind of thing.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that kind of stuff in the book.
Yeah.
The book sets out a lot of this stuff where it's just like, here's the actual data, hard
data that you can find. Yeah.
And then what actually happened at the time.
And here's the stories that match up with that.
You can only kind of take eyewitnesses, and if you believe them or not. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's an interesting time because Tom DeLonge, on one of his many escapades in the early days, like when before TTSA was public,
his company,
To the Stars Academy, it's now called. He went on a UFO focused show called Fade to Black with Jimmy Church, which is like a coast to coast kind of show. And on that show, he talked about Greek symbols being on the crashed ship at Roswell and stuff of that nature. And then bless him, he went on Joe Rogan and he started talking about Atlantis and the Greek gods and aliens and all this stuff. And Joe Rogan was just like, how do I discuss this without making him look like a complete moron?
But this is the thing, is it's like when you think UFOs, you think, oh, it's Joe Rogan. And you think Joe Rogan, you're like, okay, this guy's a bit of a meathead. Yeah. And I think that's the thing, is because no one hates the UFO community more than the UFO community. Like there's so much infighting.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
And I think, like this is why it's hard to talk about something like this, where it's like just the fact that we're saying, oh, tonight on the show we're talking about UFOs, people are automatically going to roll their eyes and go tinfoil hat. Garbage.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm trying to say, is like, especially with this book, which is very matter of fact, and it's just like, no, there's something going on. We don't know what it is. Here's the actual data.
And we're not claiming Atlantis.
We're not claiming it. Don't just dismiss it and say, oh, it's like there is, I don't know, but
who knows?
something.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, like we said earlier, it's interesting to sort of think about, like, what are the implications if this is true? Yeah.
The reason I mention this is because Tom DeLonge, like the latest update, if you will, is that now so one of the unexpected side effects of UFOs becoming way more prime time is that people have begun taking them more seriously since the New York Times articles started coming out. And the Washington Post also talked a bit about it. Fox News talks about it on Tucker Carlson.
That's the other problem.
Well, to be fair,
actually, we
Tucker
talked
Carlson
about
does. Look, I think he's an. You know what?
Don't even say he's a scumbag.
Liberals a thing. I'm gonna whatever. I'll hold my tongue. But he does take it seriously. So you do have media taking this story incredibly seriously now, where they used to just laugh.
We mentioned
even in Australia. Sorry, Ross Coulthart has a document. He's done like 2 documentary shows in Australia about UFOs now, or something like that.
Yeah, there was that Channel 7 or 9 like special,
which was kind of for beginners as well.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. You get people talking about it now, especially with the. Have you seen the Graham Hancock? I think it was Netflix show about the prehistory Earth, like what they don't want you to know, kind of thing.
No, but I heard it was just a bunch of mumbo jumbo.
Yeah, well, it kind of, that's the zeitgeist at the moment. Is the thing that Tom DeLonge allegedly got in trouble for talking about was this notion that the UFOs, whatever they might be, the government seems to believe, or he insinuates that the government seem to believe. You know, lots of layers of removal from the official word itself, that it's like a civilization that was around before mankind. Whatever that means, whatever the implications of that might be, I don't know. But they seem to be leaning into that now, with Tom DeLonge mentioning it again, people talking about it on the internet, experts in quotation marks talking about it. That's the current way it's being looked at by experts. In quotation, everything's in quotation marks.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm hoping Ross Coulthart will do a follow up, because he claims that he has sources and he's still getting emails and he's still going through information. He has a podcast where he talks about this kind of stuff.
Oh, really?
Need to Know, I believe it's called, with him and Bryce Zabel or something.
Okay.
And they do like a weekly show where they talk about this type of stuff.
Huh.
He's still making stuff. He's still working on this stuff. I think that he is the truth crusader for this, because like you said, his reputation's on the line in a way.
Yeah, and he, like I said, he's a good outsider.
Yeah,
who's credible and who's not just like, oh, this is all real.
He can talk to people.
Yeah, he's like, oh, the alien green people spoke to me.
He's reputable enough to talk to people from government. He can talk to UFO believers because they know he's kind of on their side.
Yeah.
Like, he'll listen to people without judgment, which I think in ufology is one of the most important points.
Yeah.
Because like, if let's just say hypothetically you see something or you experience something, most of the journalists in the world are going to laugh at you. He won't.
Yeah. That's the thing, and that's why a lot of people don't talk about it, because they know their credibility and their careers and their livelihood might be on the line.
Yeah.
Also, I think we talked about this on a previous episode, but a big problem with this kind of stuff is a lot of conspiracy theories and ufology has been co-opted by right-wing nut jobs.
So back before Donald Trump announced his run for candidate for presidency, I used to go on the conspiracy subreddit.
Yeah.
And way back when, people talk about Bigfoot, they talk about the CIA,
the fun stuff.
The fun stuff, relatively wholesome stuff.
Yeah.
Wholesome, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But now it's all QAnon, Donald Trump horse shit, and honestly, I hate going on there because COVID is an inside job. Vaccines will kill. Like there was a whole thing.
Pizzagate.
Sorry to derail this even.
No, that's what I'm saying.
There was a whole thing where they're like, everybody who has the COVID vaccine is going to get AIDS in 10 years. Yeah. And they were seriously talking about this. Insane. And I'm like, they're all mentally ill. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's a problem is like it's like I said, when we started this episode and we're like, today we're going to talk about UFOs, automatically people associate that with right-wing nut jobs. And I think we talked about it on a previous episode where it's just like, no, we like the fun stuff.
And also the philosophical ramifications.
And the stuff that actually has basis in, not in reality, but a basis in...
reality is a good enough word.
Yeah.
Because it's like a basis in
humanitarianism. Maybe that's not the right word.
No, I know what you mean.
But instead of being like, Bill Gates is trying to track you with microchips, it's like, no. There are
common sense needs to be involved.
Yeah, there are creatures and things we don't understand about.
And what does that mean for us? Because it's like Tom DeLonge always says, whether you like him or not, whether you think he's a disinformation agent or not, he says that the reason people deserve to know is because whatever it is, it's a part of nature. So if it comes from Earth, it's a part of our shared history together. So we deserve to know. If it comes from space, again, we're not alone in the universe. We deserve to know. It's all a part of nature. It's not some forbidden occult subject. And we shouldn't be treating it as such.
And at the end of the day, if nothing else, and I think we talked about this last time as well, if nothing else, it's a good philosophical brain
exercise,
brain muscle
exercise. It's like a productive use of the imagination, because it's like it makes you also look at your own life, your own civilization, because it's like, how would it change us as people if this came to light?
Every year they're making discoveries of older human civilizations and older tools.
They just found out that we weren't the first civilization to use fire in a controlled manner. Yeah. Which apparently is a huge anthropological deal.
Yeah.
Because they found that there was a smaller hominid species, and, forgive me, specialists, I don't know the name, there was a star cave, I believe it's called, and they found fire pits with controlled fire, elements from controlled fire usage in there for the cremation of bodies, apparently, something like that. I'm like, again, we don't know our own history as well as we think we do, which, to reiterate my point, has kind of sparked this larger conversation about what do we actually know about us as human beings. Let alone the whole universe at large.
That's the thing, is it's like we're always learning something new about our past, and that helps us to learn about our present and our future.
Yeah.
And if there is a alien or interdimensional element to that, what does that mean?
And even if there's
not, and even if there's not, what the hell's going on?
Yeah.
And it's interesting to think about, like, there's so much we haven't discovered.
If you detach it from the right wing stuff, don't get me, okay, so
the more
to play devil's advocate here, reptilians might be feeding on my louche, right?
You have to explain that for listeners.
Okay, so when human beings die, all of our negative energy is collected by reptilians in another plane of existence, and that feeds their evil agenda.
Apparently, yeah.
Apparently. Now, you know what? That might be happening. I don't know.
And the negative energy is called louche.
But I can't control that. You know what I mean? If there are reptilians, like, what's their culture like? Okay, you know what? I'm alive right now. I'm having a pretty good time. I can forgive the louche man. You know what I mean? Like, but I want to know, like, what does their society look like? What does their culture look like?
We've had this discussion off air where it's just like there's so much human suffering, and it's just like to just explain it away by like, oh, it's because the aliens are making us suffer. I think that's.
Look, again,
it's I'm an atheist. I don't believe in religion, but it's a very religious way of looking at things. It's like, oh, there's an outside force.
So the way I've seen it explained by people who
we're going off the rails again.
Well, I mean, we kind of are, but it feeds into Tom DeLonge's whole thing because he doesn't view the entities as positive at all. He thinks they're our enemies.
That's the thing.
Straight up
That's
enemies.
Actually one thing I noticed about researching this in the last year or so. Is that I do find that a lot of people who have had alien encounters or do research it do have a very negative view of the creatures or whatever they are.
If you look at the way human beings are treated in most encounters, so there's one encounter in the Mothman prophecies, which is a positive one with Injured Cold, and he helps the guy when he gets sick or whatever. Apart from that, as far as I can recall, most of them are overwhelmingly negative.
Well, there's all the abduction stories obviously are
never pleasant.
Yeah, but
we're like cattle.
Yeah, and that's the thing. There's cattle mutilations and disappearances and all that stuff. But I think like just in the last year or so, is like when people talk about it, is like just the
indignity of it all. Frankly.
Yeah. It's and that's actually something me and Callum have talked about off air. It's just like if these creatures are so far advanced, they might not even see us as intelligent beings. We're like ants.
Yeah.
We might not even be like ants. We might be like little pebbles of sand, grains of sand. Like they might literally we might not literally not even register.
Yeah.
So who knows?
But I'm blanking now. The whole thing, I think all human beings are naturally afraid of death. And so much of the UFO subject these days has to do with this kind of spirit channeling, other paranormal stuff.
Well,
but like what the aliens represent to us is this advanced society, which they can do telepathy. If Carl Jung, and forgive me, Jung enthusiasts, for butchering this.
Yeah,
he believed that UFOs were a physical manifestation of humanity's unconscious.
That's interesting.
He had a whole kind. He was basically like a psychological shaman. So he wasn't. He was like the anti-Freud. So Freud was this materialist-leaning, very straightforward psychotherapist kind of guy. Jung was like 180. He was like, humans are based on archetypes. Here's what these archetypes are. Here's what the unconscious means. And he got really weird with it, but he was also a complete genius. And as far as I'm aware, he hasn't really been proved wrong. Whereas Freud, for example, the more we know now, like we can see Freud was wrong.
Full of it, yeah.
Like a genius for his time.
Yeah.
but he didn't age well. Whereas Jung has remained this kind of psychological mystic of sorts.
Hmm.
He believed that people did see aliens, but they were a product of humanity's mind, kinda, as a global whole.
There's the theory that God is like everyone's consciousness in like a and that could be, again, like we said earlier, aliens and cryptids and and ghosts and angels, and
they're all just different manifestations
of the same thing, and all that manifestation could be of our human consciousness, because no one knows what consciousness is.
That's one of the reasons I'm so
where it goes.
Yeah, I'm so interested. It's why alien people are so fascinated with aliens. Because it's like they can do all of these incredible things, like superhuman things, you know? Aliens are kind of like superheroes.
Yeah, I mean...
in a perverse way.
There are a lot of... I mean, you know, there are a lot of, like, UFO cults and that, but we're getting into, like, the religious territory of, like, these alien beings, you know...
Well...
honestly, are no different than most religious...
Well, it's really... so it's mythology. A fascinating subject, because this is another thing that Jacques Vallée talks about a lot. He thinks that basically all religious events come from these entities pretending to be gods, and he claims it's for their own mysterious purpose. That like they want us to behave in a certain way, grow our culture in a certain way. But he says that they see their plans in terms of thousands of years. So it's like to them they're playing
the long
a
game,
slow game, but it's to get us to evolve in a culturally, socially in a certain direction. Which is why Tom DeLonge and people like, you know, even Jacques Vallée, they're kind of wary of aliens, because the evidence that they claim to see says that we're being herded in a certain direction, which might not necessarily be in our best interest. Which is, again, to reiterate, that's the current view of alleged people in government, is they think it's demonic, in quotation marks, but discount those people, because the minute you approach this kind of subject with religion, you're missing the point. In my opinion, because it's like when we reduce everything to biblical angels and demons, it doesn't make sense that way, because it's such a weird subject that it's like, just to say it's all angels, I think, like, okay, it might be angels.
Angels and demons fit into the ufology, but ufology doesn't fit neatly into...
Like, you know, one of my favorite stories from Jacques Vallée's books is the Italian-looking UFOs giving a man a pizza. I'm sorry, a pancake.
Oh, aliens. A
pancake, yeah.
Yeah, I never heard of that, and you showed me, and it's just like, what the hell?
Yeah, and I'm like, okay, well, how does that fit in? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It doesn't. But yeah, like, you know, I know we're kind of off the rails of the Ross Coulthart interview, but I think that Ross Coulthart's heart is in the right place, because his questions are more... What is it, again, to reiterate, what does it mean?
Yeah, we're getting really loosey-goosey, airy-fairy about this, but yeah, his book is very matter-of-fact.
Yeah.
What does it mean? Who's involved? What's the actual data and hard evidence?
But
that's what In Plain Sight
It is the greatest story. Like, I'm hoping in the next few years that there'll be more journalists as well to pick up this.
Well, if he keeps investigating it, maybe he could do a sequel.
Yeah.
I mean, you know how...
In plainer sight.
Yeah, like if he gathers up enough material, I'm sure he could do more.
Well, I mean, maybe we'll talk more about it on another Saturday episode if we ever get time. Because there's more every week. We're in a strange period of time where it's coming in fits and spurts now, with, you know, insiders coming out and telling stuff, and there's drama all the time now. So there's always updates. If you go on Twitter and you look at UFO Twitter, hashtag UFO Twitter, you can see all the key players and their articles, because like I said, like James was saying before with the discovery about humanity, a lot of ufologists latch onto that stuff and they have their own spin and articles, and some of them are quite good, some of them aren't. But it's a fascinating subject.
That's the thing, there's a lot of stuff out there. You have to separate the wheat from the chaff. Like there's definitely I can understand why people are so skeptical and like dismissive of it, because a lot of it's just bullshit and crazy people and garbage. But yeah, there are nuggets of like, hang on a second, there might be something there. But
we at the Tuesday Review will always tell you the truth.
The truth is out there. The truth is in here, in the podcast studio. Yeah, but yeah, since Callum's been bugging me to read the book and I finally finished it, we thought, since we have this extra studio time,
Yeah.
we thought we would just...
There's always more on the horizon. Now
Yeah.
James has got to read Journeys Out of the Body by Robert Monroe.
Well, you know what I'm listening to now? Hyperion. Classic sci-fi
Ooh, How
novel.
far in are you?
I'm up to chapter 2.
How you feeling about it so far?
Oh, really good stuff.
It gets good. It gets
Yeah.
better.
Yeah,
It gets
yeah.
crazier.
Yeah. No, since Nathan's reading In Plain Sight, I don't know if he'll ever finish it. So it'll probably come up in future episodes. And, you were always looking into UFO stuff and cryptids and all that stuff. So I'm sure that'll come up on future episodes. We're still kind of... I don't know when this episode's going to come out. It's just late December now, just before Christmas when we're recording. And we're still trying to figure some stuff out with the show and having some technical difficulties here at the studio. So we'll see. See what happens next year. The new year 2023 is just around the corner. So
I know, it came quick.
Yeah, we might. We haven't done a Saturday episode in a long time, so if we do one of those,
Should be good.
Those are always good for the UFO discussions and politics and that.
Are we signing off?
Yeah, I was going to wrap it up. Yeah.
So, normally we say adios, cousins.
Yeah.
But I think today we should say keep your eyes on the sky.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Sorry, James.
No, it's all right. I was going to say we should plug the social media and all that, but people know.
Yeah.
At Tuesday Review AU, all
If
the
you
social
found this,
media.
you know.
Yeah, you know. If you listen this far, I think you're a dedicated listener. So thank you all for listening. Adios, cousins, and
Keep your eye on the sky.
keep your eye on the sky. All right.